Something is happening in American schools. The number of students, up, but not dramatically. The number of teachers, also up, roughly keeping pace. But administrative staff, they're not just growing, they've exploded. In fact, since around 1970, the number of administrators and other non-teaching staff has grown 7 times faster than both students and teachers. So here's the question. Why are there so many people in education not teaching? Well, it's because of a rule you've probably never heard of. And once you see it, you'll start noticing it everywhere. In government agencies, in big companies, in universities, and yes, in public schools. And when you realize this rule, you'll realize the explosion of school administrators isn't a mistake. It's exactly what you'd expect. Between 1914 and 1928, the number of ships in the British Navy fell by 68%. The number of officers and sailors fell by 31%. The Navy was shrinking dramatically, but the number of officials, the people administering the Navy, it grew by 78%. Let that sink in. Fewer ships, fewer sailors, more administrators than ever. The British Navy was practically disappearing, and the office managing it was the biggest it had ever been. Cyril Parkinson thought this was funny. He wrote about it in a satirical essay for a magazine, but then he started running the numbers on other government departments, and the joke stopped being funny because it wasn't an accident, it was a pattern. He called it Parkinson's Law. Work expands to fill the time available for its completion. But what he really meant was a bit deeper than that. Bureaucracies don't grow because the work demands it. They grow because growth is what bureaucracies do, because administrators hire more administrators, because the system, left to itself, will always find a reason to get bigger, even as the thing it's supposed to manage gets smaller. And Parkinson thought he was describing the Navy. He had no idea what he'd actually found. In 1955, Parkinson asked, why do bureaucracies grow? In 2005, Clay Shirky asked something darker. Not why they grow, why the problems they were built to solve never actually get solved. Because here's what Shirky noticed. Institutions don't make decisions based on what's best for the people they serve. They make decisions based on what's best for their own survival. And the most dangerous institutions weren't the ones that failed. They were the ones that couldn't afford to succeed. The ones where solving the problem completely would mean solving themselves out of existence. So they didn't. Not out of evil, not out of conspiracy, just quiet, invisible survival logic. And he put it into a single sentence. Institutions will try to preserve the problem to which they are the solution. Read that again. Institutions will try to preserve the problem to which they are the solution. Not fix it, not eliminate it, preserve it. It sounds almost unbelievable until you think about a farmer with a mouse problem. He brings in a cat. The cat is good at its job. Really good. Within a few weeks, every mouse on the farm is gone, and the farmer looks at the cat and thinks, I don't really need you anymore. Now, think about a different cat. This cat is also good at its job, but this cat always leaves a few mice around. Not enough to be a real problem, just enough to be noticed. That farmer never gets rid of the second cat because that cat understood something the first cat didn't. Your value doesn't come from solving the problem. It comes from being the solution to it. The moment the problem is gone, so are you. Shirky watched institutions behave exactly like the second cat. Not out of evil, not out of conspiracy, just quiet, rational, invisible survival logic, playing out across entire industries, systems, and generations. And nowhere do you see a cleaner example of both Parkinson's and Sherky playing out at the same time than in the place most people never think to look. Let's talk about the American education system, because if you want to see how the Sherky principle works in action, we can look through the past 50 years of education. For 50 years, the promise of American public education has been simple. Every child, regardless of zip code, deserves an equal shot. And for 50 years, it has failed to deliver. Not for lack of money. The U.S. spends more per pupil than almost any other developed nation on Earth. Not for lack of attention. The achievement gap between low-income and high-income students has been the single most discussed, studied, and legislated problem in American education since the 1960s. No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top, Every Student Succeeds Act, law after law, billions after billions of dollars. And the gap? Still there. Almost exactly where it started. Now, you could look at that and conclude that the problem is just too hard, that poverty is complicated. These are true arguments. Or you could also look at it through Sherky's lens and ask a different question. How many people have built a career around that gap? How many administrators? How many consultants? How many testing companies? How many intervention programs? How many coordinators? Achievement gap task forces? Standardized testing contracts? All of them funded, all of them staffed, all of them growing because the gap exists. The gap isn't a failure of the system. The gap is the system. As teachers, we get to see this firsthand, but now with a new lens. Curriculum coordinators are hired to improve instructional quality. If teacher quality genuinely improved, their roles would disappear. So they continuously find new deficiencies, new frameworks, new best practices to keep teachers perpetually in a state of needing improvement. Data and assessment teams are created to track student achievement gaps. If the achievement gap closes, their jobs end. So the metrics multiply, the dashboards grow more complex, and the gaps persist. And then there's curriculum. Every few years, a new one arrives. New textbooks, new frameworks, new platforms, new trainings. Hundreds of millions of dollars flowing through the school districts like clockwork. And here's the thing nobody is saying out loud. The old curriculum most likely wasn't the problem. Reading hasn't changed that much. Math hasn't changed that much. The fundamentals of how children learn haven't really changed in decades. But a school system with no curriculum problem needs no curriculum solution. No adoption committees, no consultants, no professional development contracts, no administrators justifying their existence by separating a district through yet another transition. Every 5 to 7 years, right on schedule, the old curriculum becomes inadequate. The new research emerges, the deficiencies get identified, and the cycle begins again. Not because children needed it, because the institution did. Remember, institutions will try to preserve the problem to which they are the solution. This is what it looks like in a classroom. So now we know why this is happening. And in some ways, it was always going to happen. Because as Sherky observed, organizations don't stay organizations forever. They become organisms. And like any living thing, an organism will always fight first for survival. Not for its mission, not for the people it's created to serve, for survival. That's not a conspiracy. That's biology. But here's where it starts to feel a little personal. As a teacher, the frustration is deep when it comes to the level of administrators being hired. Not only because the funds could be directed differently, though that is definitely an important topic, but on a practical level, the more administrators and managers there are, the more work ultimately is placed on teachers. Because in order for these admin to rationalize their job titles, they have to get involved with teachers in some way, which more frequently than not requires teachers to do some kind of additional work. From collecting more data, incorporating new initiatives from every new department, to additional meetings added to the already busy schedule of a teacher. So how do we solve it? How do we reduce administration and give teachers the support they need so they can give students what they need? Well, I have a theory that may seem revolutionary and even a little crazy. I think it comes down to one word: trust. We need to trust teachers to do their job and give them supports they actually need to do the job well. Districts that are drowning in administration aren't drowning because teachers failed. They're drowning because somewhere along the way, they stopped trusting the people in the room with the students. So what does this actually look like? First, districts need to stop overmanaging and start asking. Ask teachers what size classes would best serve their students. Ask teachers what educational materials they could use in their classroom, and use their answers to make decisions to better education as a whole. At times, districts feel that more control is better teaching. But if you really think about it, what that's really saying is that you don't trust the professionals that you hired to do the job. Next, allow teachers the freedom to teach to the standards with their own strengths and unique talents. Yes, have a curriculum available, but teachers are professionals, and why did you hire them if you can't trust them? Some of these school districts have teachers going through curriculums in a way that strips the humanity of what teachers want to bring to the classroom. Lastly, I think it would benefit us all if districts were required to show us how much they're spending on administrators versus teacher and staff that are directly working with students. I don't think the public understands the amount of bureaucratic bloat happening in these public schools. I know I didn't until I researched it for this video. This also connects with trust. We as a public need to know that we can trust the money being spent towards education is going towards student-facing staffing. Transparency is trust, and trust is where this ends. Because here's the final thing Shirky would tell you. The second cat never stops leaving mice around, not unless someone finally notices what's happening. So, let's notice. Thanks so much for watching Educator University. I'm Annie, and if you like this video, then you're going to love this one.